We are joined with Yobana and Juliana, two experts who know what it's like to juggle the demands of marketing while running a business. From working with business owners to growing their own brands, they bring real world insights into what works and what doesn't when it comes to building visibility and trust. So we love these gals. We are so happy that they joined us today. I also love that they're great friends. So I think today's conversation is just going to be a really awesome chat. So, to get us started, I'd love to ask you both, how did you get into the work you're currently doing in marketing, and what's something you think founders overlook when trying to connect with their audience?
First of all, thank you for having me here. So honored to be on this call with Juliana. We met 2020, so we've known each other for a while, and it's like full circle. I would say to answer your first question, I started my career in marketing. Actually, I came from a banking background, and so I really quickly realized like I was having an itch to be creative. Um, I was like, I'm not enjoying my work. I love the people that I'm helping. I love how it was specifically business banking. And so I got to see all these entrepreneurs really do what they were passionate about. And I was like, I want to do that too. And I'm going to find a thing that I'm really passionate about. And every time that I would drive past a billboard or see a post on like social, and this was like pre-reels, um, I would be like, oh my gosh, I feel like they could change this and that. Like it would just happen automatically. And I was like, this is something that I'm really passionate about. And so I went full freelance mode, like from full time to freelance. And it was really, really tough, but I eventually found my way until July in 2022. So that's kind of how, at the very start of my career, I have like marketing slash numbers background and that itch to be creative and the itch to do something that I was really, really passionate about was what got me started. And I would say for founders, one of the things that's most overlooked is sharing the in-between stages. As a founder, it can be so vulnerable to share whenever you are in the trenches, working at 2 a.m., getting stuff ready for your business, whether that's like packing orders or whether you're like putting together a social media post, whatever that may mean to you, it is so important that you are sharing the in-between stages because of just like societal pressure. We're often so pushed to show the success aspect of things, but without that in-between stage, no one can relate to you. I think the things that I most often tell founders, like even just clients, were like, if you are launching a product, you want to show the in-between stages. You want to take your audience and those people that love you, that love your product through that stage of here's how we're developing it, because then you involve people in that development process and they're going to be rooting for you so much harder than if you were just to show the pretty product and then because they have zero attachment to you, the brand, or the product.
Now that you're saying that, I think now I'm realizing that is one of the reasons I love keeping up with your social media is because like I see you and I see your team like building what you guys have built and I feel close to you. So that is such great
Love that.
advice. I'm just realizing now that you're saying that that's one of the reasons I feel so connected to your marketing agency. So that is great advice. Juliana, I would love to get your input too.
That is a brilliant first piece of advice to kick off. Just to add to that, like giving that entire narrative, if you always look perfect online, the first time you mess up or the first time something doesn't go your way, the amount of grace that you will get is significantly lower from your audience or your customers than if you do share that you are fallible, that you are human. And I'll get more into this a little bit later of like controlling your narrative, but yeah, let people in, let people see. But I started Julian Unlimited Co. essentially around the same time that I started OKC Latina, which was late 2019, right before something that happened in 2020. I don't know, something, I forget about it. It didn't affect me at all. Um, right before we all went into shutdown, I was like, I need community. I truly cannot be the only person who needs culturally informed community that feels really safe, but also really easy. Like there's not a big lift that happens when you get a group of people together and you connect on a specific cultural level. There's certain understandings that happen. And I just needed that. I was, out of college a few years and really getting into my career, still didn't really know what that was looking like. But the work that I did to grow community with OKC Latina ended up bringing me other opportunities for my freelance business, because that's my freelance agency. And they worked kind of together to create really, really unique opportunities. Like in my bio, I do district management where I manage two nonprofits that run Uptown 23rd. I am also working in minority entrepreneurship spaces, helping event plan, like all just without the work that I had done, those contracts, those pieces of work that I do make no sense. There's not a through line, but because of the time spent building community and working within these spaces, when someone meets me and we get to know each other, they're like, oh, this makes the most sense. This is actually the most you possible career there could be. And I'm like, and exactly. And that's on personal branding. But the one thing I think that people overlook in the beginning, and that's something that I did very much so, was the importance of data, not just, keeping track of maybe analytics or, kind of the big scary numbers of growth, but even just looking at take a screenshot of the day that you hit 100 followers. Note that date. And then the next time when you hit your next milestone, maybe that's 500, maybe that's 1,000. Take a screen, celebrate that time, but also know that when you're doing that kind of thing, you're literally collecting data that will help you to later explain the story and success of your business or your brand. Looking at what are people asking you about, what are people trying to get more from you, and look at what patterns are is this data kind of telling you. I have found that when it's time to apply for a grant or when it's time to apply for an award, because we all love a trophy, having that data makes that process so much easier, and it's something that definitely gets overlooked.
Thank you for answering those questions. I would love to get into our next section. So let's start with something that trips up a lot of founders early on, figuring out what they're actually trying to reach, because target audience gets thrown around all the time. But when you're in the thick of building, it can be really hard to zoom out and define exactly who that is. And sometimes even when you think you figured it out, your message still isn't quite landing. So I'd love to dive into how founders and creators can really find and keep their audience and ultimately their ideal customers. So Yobana, when you're working with business owners, how do you guide them through the process of actually getting to their audience? And what are some clear signs that they don't actually have this nailed down yet?
The most clear sign is when someone says, I think. People will say, I think my audience is this. And it's like, no, Juliano brought up such an amazing point that data is going to give you your best answers. So whenever we're working with a founder, a company, and they're like, hey, I think this is what my audience is, we're like, okay, do you have any customer data that you can share? And it's really not so we can do like a deep dive of like their sales or anything like that. It's really so that we can get a grasp of who exactly is the customer, because there's usually a gap. There's a gap between your now customer and then your ideal target market, because there's outliers that fall outside of that. What we like to do is we do about 20-page strategy where we really deep dive, but how this can be more applicable, like if you're a small business and you want to do a deep dive. Who's purchasing your product? What is their age? What do they look like? What do they do? Where do they hang out? And then you can start kind of working backwards and saying, okay, is this the ideal target market that I made this product for? Is this the ideal target market that I developed this service for? If it's not, you have a gap. Most of the time, that gap can be either in the product itself or in the way that you're messaging things. Majority of the time, it's messaging. Very few times it's the actual product. So like messaging, that's why so many times you'll see a brand put out literally the same product, different messaging, different colors. Like all of your branding is so important. And so that will help shape the people that you actually target. And I would say if we're talking about stages, like branding should be your first stage. And it doesn't just mean like logo and color palette. Yes, all of those things are important, but ideally, like, who are you? What's your personality? We always like to ask brands, like, if your brand was had a personality, what would they be like? Like, would you like them? Would you hang out with them? And so that kind of like helps really get the essence of the brand that you are building and comparing that data of like now and versus like ideal target market. And then you can work that way.
That's such a good point, Giovanna, because so many times when we're working with founders and we're like, okay, let's start with the brand, then they have, like you said, it, and I think I did the same thing with my business when I was running it. It was like, I got the logo and my colors and my business name, and I got my business cards. It's like, but who are you and what are you trying to present? So there's some deeper questions that can make that process so much easier. A lot of business owners start with messaging that tries to speak to everyone, which usually doesn't mean it really resonates with anyone. But at the same time, niching down too far can potentially leave out potential customers to limit growth. So, how do you recommend founders balance being clear and niche in their messaging without boxing themselves out of potential opportunities?
I think there's such thing as niching down way too much. When you do that, you will notice you are alienating so much of the population. Majority of the time that happens in age ranges. Like you'll say, this is only 25 to 30. Like that is a very small gap. If you are targeting a very specific population, then it leaves out everyone else. To give more background, whenever I first started freelancing, I started with my original business called Ole. So we were meant to focus on like Hispanic community specifically, and very quickly realized that there was so many more resources that were needed. This needed to be a more expansive effort, and the services were too niche. The population was just way, way too niche, where it was going to kill the business. And I think niching down has the ability to kill your business if you niche down too much. Whenever it comes to content creators, so many times you'll see this advice on social of telling you like, yes, you need to focus on just fitness. Just giving an example, fitness and telling people what they should be eating, what they should not be eating, which is great if that's all you want to focus on. But whenever it comes to partnerships, if you want people to focus and learn from your lifestyle and really be attached to you as a person, you can't niche down too much. And so the same thing applies to a business is if you want people to grow with you and grow with the business, niching down too much will kill the business. Keep it very simple for people to understand, especially with messaging. I don't know if you guys have heard this term of like keep it stupid simple. But the more simple that you keep it and the easier it is for people to understand, the easier it is for people to understand what you do and what the product is. If you are having to over explain it, it's gone. You lost someone. So I would say try to simplify your messaging. And if you feel like you have boxed yourself in too tightly, think of outside of those areas, what are some people that you could be reaching? And what are some opportunities that you want to miss, that you are missing out on, that you don't want to miss out on?
There's a sweet spot, but there are questions that you can ask yourself to get to that sweet spot. Well, I would love to ask you both this question, and it's just a rapid fire question. So just tell me the first thing kind of that comes to mind. So you've both worked with brands at different stages. What is one low cost or creative way to not only find your audience, but make sure your message is sticking with them?
Repeat, repeat,
Repeat.
repeat. No. Repeat repeat your messaging.
Oh, I love it.
Like, if you think you've said it too much, say it again. I was speaking with Naoma Cernazon from Nuevo Studio, and it just came up that even that number, the 3 times, I think that's like in person, right? Like I'm telling someone about something 3 times in person. Online, it used to be 7. It is now 21. 21 times that someone needs to see something on socials for it to stick, not even for them to maybe purchase. Our attention spans are this big now, like TikTok scrolling we're ruined. But that just means you get to like spend that time practicing repeating yourself, perfecting that messaging. Also, I tell this to people all the time. Something like as simple as posting a story is very quick and it can be very simple, but people feel, oh, I'm posting too much. I'm posting about this one event too much. But guess what? Say you have 5,000 followers, you get maybe 300 people seeing a story every single time. The same 300 people are not seeing that same, but you are needing to continually spoon feed your audience the information you want them to know, because trust me, they need it. And you'll think you have a friend that fully understands your business, and this is Juliana, she does XYZ, and you're like, actually that's not at all what I do. How do I gently correct my friend because they don't understand my messaging? And it's because I haven't given them 21 times, I guess. But yes, repeat, 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 repeat.
I love that. And you came with the data. That is a high number, but it's real.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
it's terrifying, but we got this.
We got this, friends. Gabby, I would love to check in with you and see if there's anything going on in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. I know it's been on fire, a lot of questions, a lot of things I think people that's resonating with our audience. One thing that did came up is how worth it is it really to get your name out there through newsletters or other emails to a standard contact list? I think that's super important because we're talking about, I think a lot of the times the focus goes to social media, but then there's also other channels that you could be on that might work better for you. So I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Email list, absolutely. So social should always be kind of your first step. What you want to do is you want to lead them through kind of the marketing funnel. Email list is where people convert. So if you are not building a list that you own also, it is so, so important. Like if Instagram and TikTok were to go away tomorrow, do you have a place where you can contact people? If the answer is no, you need to build something. Don't be afraid to be salesy. The way that I would suggest that you go about it is offer value. If you are building an email list, you want some type of freebie or weight that you can offer something so that people feel like they are getting something in exchange, not just giving up their information. But absolutely, should be a no-brainer to build an email list that you can nurture and target and retarget and really take through that marketing funnel.
Thank you. Another question that we had was, what are your favorite tools and tricks to facilitate your process? So I know you mentioned just repeat, Juliana, but are there any other tools or other strategies that have helped you along the way?
I wish. Yobana, you run an agency with more than just by yourself. So I think you'd have the better tools than I will.
I would say tools, schedule out everything. If you don't put it on your calendar, it's not happening. Like I tell my team this, and I think some of the girls are here and they can attest to this. Like I'm like, if we need something to happen, we got to put it on the calendar. Put it on your calendar, schedule it out. If you're creating content, create it in batches. It is going to be the easiest way that you're going to get content out. Sit down, do it, create in batches. Like for clients, we're always, always, always creating in batches. For our own content, we schedule out, everyone comes in office, we plan out content, we shoot it in a batch, edit it in a batch, schedule it in a batch. So everything that you're doing should be in batches because you're going to be so much more effective and you're planning for your future. So your future self will absolutely thank you.
And by batches, I know someone questioned that in the chat. Truly, just you pick out a couple of hours to batch create. You create, your week's worth of content or a month's worth of content all at once, and then you're not having to think about it. You're not dragging that process out. You're doing it in a really condensed timeline, and then that creates that repeatable process that is not only repeatable but sustainable, because we can do a process. I can say, I got my ADHD morning routine down packed, but if it's not sustainable, it's not helpful.
Absolutely. I think we've gone through a couple different iterations of like what it means to batch create content, and it has to be what works for you to continue to do it. So there's a lot of content out there that will tell you this is the process. Find your process.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you guys for your valuable answers. I know I see the chat is blowing up and they're loving it. So let's move the conversation. Showing up consistently is probably one of the most tried and true pieces of advice that we've heard. It's not flashy, it's not gimmicky, it's just real, but it can also be one of the hardest parts of marketing, especially when you're wearing all the hats, like a lot of entrepreneurs are. So there's so much pressure to post everywhere all the time and make it go viral. It's easy to fall into this cycle of doing what you think you should be doing. But instead of focusing on what really resonates with your community, we want to focus on what actually we want to focus on what resonates and converts. So Juliana, I would love to know from you, what's helped you avoid the trap of trying to be everywhere at once? And how do you suggest other founders decide where to focus their marketing energy when they don't want to be online all day, all the time?
I think it's almost a rite of passage as an entrepreneur to feel that feeling of oh, if I'm not posting everywhere constantly, I'm missing out. But really, at some point, you might just be wasting your effort if it's not focused, if it's not if it doesn't have a little bit of strategy behind it, right? So it's almost worth it to step back. Maybe you take a couple of days off to kind of assess and figure out maybe what's going to be working again more sustainably. But we don't have to be in every single platform. We should maybe have a presence, like, claim your handle, show up a little bit somewhere. But I'm not consistently posting to LinkedIn for OKC Latina. If I have an amazing event like this, you best believe I'm going to be sharing that. When we're tagged and mentioned, we'll engage. But that's not my focus. Truly, if I ask myself, where is my community? Where is my audience? They're on Facebook and they are on Instagram. So guess where I am constantly? Facebook and Instagram. We have other socials and you'll see us pop in there every once in a while, but that is not my everyday concern, truly. And that's how I've made it sustainable for myself. And then really to grow an audience and actually build community from that audience. I think I just saw someone post it in the chat. You have to show up in person. Just like there's the theme of, if you want to have a village, you gotta be a good villager. You gotta show up when you get invited to an event. Not every event, but when you get invited, when you have the time, when you have the mental capacity, show up. And not only show up, but really be engaging in the conversation, try to meet new people. I early on fell into this trap of, oh, I have some free time, like as in there's nothing on my calendar, right? So let me figure out how to fill all these voids, without realizing some of those need to stay blank. There need to be gaps in my calendar where I can simply sit on my couch in silence and recover from being so social, because I have to recharge in order to help my community, right? So show up in person when you can show up as your best self, and then really find where your people, where your customers, your community live online, and focus your brain power on growing that specific platform and figure out how to lead them into those funnels that Yobana was talking about.
Kind of looking at it from a different lens, Juliana, when you're the face of the business, it's easy for your content to become a mix of personal and professional. I know I struggled with this as well. How do you recommend founders show up online in a way that's both authentic and strategic?
My general broad advice is to just simply not combine personal and professional. If you really feel like you want to be talking about maybe your family life or some fun, like your vacation, make a personal page, let that live there. Keep your business separate, especially if you have a product. It's a little stickier sometimes, I think, in a service-based industry. That's where I've struggled with. But you know what I have loved, and I was not sure about it at first, but it has helped me so much, the collaborate feature on Instagram. So when I am going to go and post about the really cool Stitch Crew event that I went to at the Paycom Center in the Thunder offices, that is something that's really cool because I represented OKC Latina in that event. But I also, that's just something professionally really cool that I get to be like, this is what I spent my like Tuesday evening doing. That is something that applies to both my personal and my professional, right? So that's something that I would do a collaborative post. And I would talk about it from the lens of how it benefits both sides of that, right? But really, there's so much power, and I loved this line that I thought of, so I wrote it down. There is so much power in not sharing everything, because it goes back to being able to control your narrative. You want to show, again, those in between moments of your business, but what you don't share about your personal life, you then still get to kind of control, especially as you grow and become a really successful, $1 million making business. But if you're, for your brain's sake, need to just kind of be very black and white, have personal social media that is personal to you, and you talk about whatever the heck it is you want to talk about. Have your business social media only reflect the business messaging that you were talking. Because let me tell you, your ideal customer, I'll take Ashley, your ideal customer for your folks looking for inclusive yoga, they may care about like what your like cool your dogs or your pets are doing at home, but they probably don't. And if they think that they're not getting what they need from you as a business, they're just going to unfollow you. They're just going to stop paying attention. So any of those 21 times that you get in front of them, you need to make it worth their while.
I feel like we can circle back, use your advice, but also circle back to Yobana's advice is like, you can separate and you can have your business account and your personal account, but your business account can still reflect who you are and what your business, that personal side. There's ways to do it all. Yobana, kind of going back to, staying consistent without burning out when it comes to marketing. Marketing trends change constantly, and the pressure to go viral or stay visible can feel overwhelming. So how do you stay grounded in your strategy, and how can other founders or content creators decide what's actually worth paying attention to?
What Juliana was saying is so, so important of being on the platforms where your customers are at. If you have a specific limited resources, whether it's time, energy, or budget, focus on the platforms where your customers are showing up. Once you can grow on those and you can expand to other ones. However, I would recommend quality over quantity. If to you the number that you can put out of posts a week is one post, make it worthwhile. And when I say worthwhile is what reasons are you giving people to follow you? Are you giving them value? Are you giving them a reason to stay and be there? Because people are scrolling on social media every day and they're coming across hundreds and hundreds of videos. What makes your content special? What makes you special? Like, what reasons are you giving them to give you a follow? Because they're letting you into their lives and to give you time. And so I always say quality over quantity. That may look so different for one person versus another person. So determine what works best for you. And then obviously like batch content, trends come and go. What we always suggest is if you are just jumping on a trend, I give this example. I've been giving this example so much in the past few weeks. But whenever the Taylor Swift meme came out, everyone was posting the same thing. The album, like you were scrolling, and I kid you not, I saw 5 posts that looked identical back to back to back. What that does, it doesn't differentiate your product or your business at all. Like it's just a hodgepodge of the same thing, of everyone posting the same thing. So if you are choosing to jump on a trend, make it to where it's adaptable to your brand and change it up. Be unique with it. If you are choosing to jump on a trend that's like a lip sync, does that make sense for your audience? Is that even relevant? Like ask yourself those questions. If you just think it's cool, probably shouldn't be jumping on it just to go viral, because viral isn't always good. There's a viral that gives you a lot of visibility and no following, which if that's your goal, then that's great. You're hitting goals. But if your goal is to grow a following, you have to make sure that the content that you're creating to go viral is actually relevant to the brand. So for example, whenever we started really implementing content until July, one of the things that I really wanted to do is offer value. And I think Chloe's on this call, but so you guys might recognize Chloe from our Canva tips. We put out so much content and value for people without asking for anything. And what we wanted to do is really establish trust and give people a reason to follow us and care about what we had to say and what we did. And sure enough, we achieved, I believe around the time it was like 4 to 5 million in reach. Out of those people, we grew from 700 to 120,000. I say that because that is really rare, in that if your content provides value, people will follow you and people will stick around. On the other hand, we have some accounts that our goal is reach, and we've achieved enormous amount of reach. And the following hasn't translated. And that's not a bad thing, because that was our goal in the first place, was reach. Like the client said, is specifically, hey, we want to focus on reach, and we've achieved that. Make sure that you know your goals and work backwards from there.
I saw in the chat, Erica said, viral is not a growth strategy. And it's fun to be, and I agree. I think it's really fun to be viral and it can help you out, but it's not a growth strategy. So thank you so much for that, Yobana. I would love for you both to answer this question, and then we will hop into questions from the audience. But when you're putting content out there, not seeing immediate results, it can be really discouraging. What advice would you give to a founder who says, I'm consistently putting content out there, but I'm not seeing results, and I don't know what data or feedback I need to be looking at to actually move the needle?
I think it goes back to patterns again. And it can be as simple as, because again, like, I'm not a numbers person. I have a liberal arts degree. I did college algebra and that was it. So I'm not trying to be in the numbers all the time. But what it can look like is this video that I put out that was just a bunch of clips to a trending sound, no voiceover, but just text on the screen. When I do those don't do very well. But when I do videos with voiceover and give a narrative to the story that I'm telling, those do very well for me. That's something that is looking at data, what performs well, what doesn't, consistently, and saying, okay, well, I won't do those anymore. Let me just stick to these. I think a big piece of just general advice, especially when you're building a community, is your community will tell you what they need. A lot of times when I'm looking to do strategic planning to figure out what it is that I need to be marketing, what it is that I need to be pushing, I just kind of sit back and I figure out, what are they trying to tell me? What questions are my community asking me consistently? Those are the questions I need to be answering on my socials, in my newsletter, in person. And then those create that messaging that I'm sharing, which will, again, it all leads back to the funnel. But really just let your community tell you what they need, because they're already there for you. They already have that buy-in, and you're all kind of building something together when it is a community-based effort.
Love that too, Juliana, because it's like, you are looking at data and you are looking at numbers, but it might not even feel like it. You're just
exactly
what the views are. And I think Gabby and I, we run the Stitch Crew social media, and there's times where we put something out and we're like, whoa, this did really well. And we're kind of shocked, but then we know that, that is a really big new insight and we need to move in that direction. And it can sometimes be surprising at what does really well.
Absolutely. And shockingly, every time I have to put something together very quickly, maybe there's a fast turnaround on a timeline, maybe it's just really topical, right? I will put the least amount of brain power into something, and that's the thing that pops off harder than anything that I've put hours and hours and hours of effort into. And I still have yet to figure out what that means exactly, but I'm working on it.
Yobana, is there anything you wanted to add to this one?
Define what success looks like to you on social. If it is following, if it is reach, if it is getting newsletter subscribers, you got to define what success means to you. Because if you don't, you're kind of shooting darts everywhere, hoping that it lands on the bullseye. So once you have your goals, set KPIs. If that's following, like, hey, I achieved, like Juliana was saying, I achieved 100 people that are following me, 200, 300, and keep tabs on that. What was it that got me there? Go back to your data, figure out what videos are performing the best. In terms of social, your videos are the ones that are going to get, majority of the time, the most visibility. We have seen a lot of carousels working really, really well right now. But videos go on the Reels algorithm, which the Reels algorithm is meant for discoverability. It works very, very similarly to how TikTok algorithms work, where they are meant for the discovery of new things, new people, new creators, when on the opposite side, you have posts. So those are going to be less visible. It's going to be going out to the audience that most likely already knows a little bit about you. And then you have your stories algorithm that is strictly people that already know you. So use it accordingly. You don't have to explain who you are to people that are already bought in to follow you. What you want to do there is lead people to subscribe to your newsletter, lead people to get to know you more, jump on a Q&A. What I'm telling you, people are nosy. People are nosy. I'm nosy myself. I want to see what is going on in your day. What are you doing? How do you manage accounts? What tools are you like? All of those things. I love to look at stories, see even like what people are eating during the day. I'm like, this is so interesting. This is so awesome. And so use that to your advantage. Hop on stories, hop on Q&As. Those are where the conversations are going to happen. They go to your DMs, conversations continue, someone's bought in, they feel like they know you, and then they convert. So definitely use the different tools, but make sure that you know what your goals are and what success means to you.
Thank you both for answering my questions. I know that we have a lot of questions in the chat. I've seen it been popping off this whole time. So I would love to open it up. Gabby, is there any certain questions, or do we want to open it up to the chat?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question that wasn't answered.
It's okay to jump in.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So something I've kind of started noticing is the trial reels on Instagram. What is the difference between like a regular reel and a trial reel? Because I know you'd mentioned the algorithm and like the just discoverability.
I can jump in.
I was like, that's all you, girl.
The difference between a regular reel and a trial reel. So reels are shown to new audiences and your existing audience. A trial reel is basically an opportunity to test new audiences that normally wouldn't get to see your content. So basically what you're getting is like a clean slate for the algorithm to test whether your video content is worthy of people engaging, staying, and checking out your page. So if you have the opportunity to, and I don't see why not, copy whenever you're posting a reel to your page, duplicate it, and then post it on trial reels. And just see how it performs. People have had success with it. People have also said that it did nothing for them, but you don't really know how it'll do until you try it. So I would definitely say try it out, and I'd love to know if it worked for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Great question, Ashley. I think there's always something new or a new, change to the algorithm or what gets posted. So great question. We also had another question pop up in the chat. And Whitney, would you feel comfortable sharing that question out loud?
Such great information. And so I think for me, in starting Roots and Blooms, I've been at it for about 5 years. And I started with my baby. So I like did some posts of like me and having my baby at the shop and just kind of like growing the business. And I feel like when my sister was helping with marketing, she kept trying to push me more and more in front of the camera. Like people want to see you, they want to hear from you, they want to see what you're doing, your next steps, all that different stuff. And so I don't know, I've just been so like scared, I guess, to like really put everything out there. So the behind the scenes, I think, is a great thing. And then also like, when am I overtaking the brand? Or I don't know, I guess I just that fear of like when do I know that I need to step back out, or I don't really want to make everything all about me. And I think that's where it's like, I don't want to feel like I'm braggadocious or, like boasting about everything that I have going on. So just trying to keep it authentic. So yeah, any advice?
I feel like I can really speak to this socials, especially because I started OKC Latina right before the pandemic. It had to be me. I didn't really have a choice. And to be able to now, I think we'll celebrate 6 years in November. And this is the point where I have started to say my personal life goals and also my goals for OKC Latina have evolved. So my business after, 6 years, my strategic long-term, like 3-year plan now does not involve me being the center of like every video or what have you. And if you have followed us, you'll kind of probably notice that has petered off quite a bit. I think when you are the face of your brand, I think that is totally okay. I think it's also totally okay to share, again, whatever it is you want to share, especially when it comes to like the process of the business, like whatever makes sense for you to be in front of the camera to talk about the business. But it's when your long-term plans for the business no longer align with that, when it's time, you're like, I'm going to step away from the day-to-day. So I won't even be here to be in content. When you establish that those are those goals that you're working towards, that's when you can give yourself that time and space to work towards it. I decided this probably a year ago, actually a little over a year ago, that I'm going to be stepping away. So that long-term plan, I just took it in kind of like quarters, like I was 3 months at a time. What do I need to be doing so that one day when you don't see my face, except for, the occasional update, it's not a complete shock. It's not just one day, it's all Juliana all the time, which we love. And then the next day it's nothing, right? You gotta train the audience to get used to the new style of content and things. So my biggest advice for that, because I truly just learned it within the last year, just establish a timeline for yourself and for your goals for your company, and just take it a little bit at a time to slowly make those changes. We have to just give ourselves space. I think that's my biggest piece of advice as an entrepreneur. Give yourself space, because everything seems like it's on fire all the time. It's really not. I work in marketing. There's literally never an emergency, like ever. I am not a lifesaver. I am not a first responder. I can take time to answer an email. I can take time to make a decision. And so we can all do it. I promise.
That's really helpful. And I think kind of coming up with my goals and everything, because I think for me, I think most people probably think that I'm still the one that's designing most that comes out, but I'm not necessarily designing. So we did highlight one of our designers the other day and got a really good response from it. And so I think that's helpful. And I'm trying to step more out of being like the doer and more of the overseer. And I didn't realize that was a difference.
Yeah.
And so like trying to become more of like the manager over like it's all happened in like the last week, so I'm just like, who am I, what do I do?
And take time to process that. Like a week is nothing. Take some time to process that change in your role. And also follow July Digital Studio on socials, because they do a great job again, I'm on this call with Chloe and she's so famous to me, you don't even know. This is amazing. But they do a great job at highlighting their entire team. So then it does take the pressure off of Yobana to be there in every video.
Thank you so much. And, I keep hearing a lot of these like patterns. Think about it strategically, like figure out what your goals are, what your version of success is. And I think overall, like we just need to be okay with taking time to figure what that is, and not just moving forward because this is a viral trend or this is what this other company is doing, and really figure out what works best for you. So thank you everyone for the amazing questions, for keeping the chat on fire, Jay for moderating the session. Before we close out, please let us know in the chat what's one thing from today's conversation that really stuck with you. And then Yobana, Juliana, if you can close us out too with just any final thoughts and how we can follow your work. I posted the OKC Latina Instagram page and then the July Digital Studio Instagram page in the chat, but where else can we follow your work?
Thank you, first of all, for jumping on this call and taking time out of your day. I know everyone's schedules are so busy, so we truly, truly appreciate y'all being here. You can keep up with us. Our Instagram page is probably the best way to keep up with us. We post so many resources on there. One thing that I would say, if you can take away from this, is that if you, as a founder, cannot hone in on what your business does, is, and where it's going, everything is going to trickle down from there. Like you can have the best social strategy, but if you don't have at your core who you are and where you are headed, you need to figure that out. A really good resource that I've been reading is called the E-Myth. If you want to go and if you want to build a business that goes beyond yourself, the E-Myth is a great book to read. I'm actually right now in the middle of reading it. And whenever I started July, I wanted this to go way beyond who I am and way beyond myself. I want this to be so much bigger than who I am. And so if you are trying to build something that is very similarly, it's a great resource to look out to.
Thank you so much for being here. I did love seeing everything in the chat. My biggest last kind of piece of advice is two parts, and it kind of goes hand in hand. Prioritize rest and mental health. And truly, when I was saying, like, joking about sitting on my couch in silence, that's called quiet time at my house. And anybody gets to call quiet time. And we just simply do not speak to each other until it's time to be done with quiet time, because we just need that at times, right? Part of being able to feel like you can rest is knowing that you have a community of folks that have your back. And I think truly the best thing that I did for my business and just being an entrepreneur as a whole is getting plugged into the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Oklahoma City. That's where I live. If you're plugged into that system within Tulsa or wherever you happen to be, that basically surrounds me with great friends that get it, that are sounding boards for me when I need a sounding board, or are just there when I need them. And you're also getting access to events and trainings like these. You get plugged in, correct. Nobody builds businesses alone. Absolutely. So get plugged into the entrepreneurial ecosystem that surrounds you. Like October 13th to the 17th is Minority Enterprise Ecosystem Development Week. And that's a week where we're doing 16 plus events that are all free for minority entrepreneurs in the city. Get access to those kinds of events, those spaces, and you'll be able to very passively develop really incredible entrepreneurship skills that you don't realize you're developing until you're on one of these calls and you're like, oh, I know the answer to that. Oh, they said that. I actually knew that. And it's just the best thing that you can possibly do. Get plugged in with be a good villager and you'll have a great village.